Welcome to this episode of Firearms Friday from the Wyoming State Museum here in Cheyenne. My name's Evan Green. I'm the firearms historian for the museum currently, and for the last 3 to 4 years I've been assisting the staff with updating the inventory on the firearms in the permanent collection. So what do we have here? This is a Vetterli rifle. It was a Swiss military issue. It is a model of 1869/71. It is the first repeating cartridge rifle adopted by a country's military. So it was a little bit ahead of its time. Vetterli was the inventor, and he was much impressed by the lever-action Winchester rifles that he was familiar with. So he copied the tubular magazine under the barrel, which you can't see here because it is covered by this full-length forestock. So this is a caliber 10.4 by 38 rimfire, which is a fairly bizarre and unobtainable cartridge at the present time. So how did this end up in the United States, and does it have a Wyoming connection? Well, let's see if we can find out. Actually, these rifles were one of the first military surplus firearms that were imported into the United States and sold at bargain basement prices. Over the years, we've seen Russian firearms, German firearms, imported into the United States. Some of these I can't remember this specifically, but my dad had talked about going to a surplus store or even a Sears Roebuck store, and there'd be a barrel full of rifles, and you could have your pick for 10 or 15 bucks and take it home. A lot of them, both foreign origin rifles and U.S. military surplus rifles, Springfields and Enfields, were subsequently converted, sporterized, and turned into hunting rifles with a lot of the extra stuff taken off. Sometimes the barrels were shortened, the stocks were changed out. So these came in around the turn of the century, very late 19th century, very early 20th century. And once again, they were cheap. They were $5, $10 rifles. And it's interesting, the Swiss have a reputation for being neutral, so none of these rifles were ever used in combat, and I question whether this one was ever fired at all, because it is a black powder rifle, and normally firearms from that era, you will see corrosion in the bore or around the action, because the residue from the black powder attracts moisture, it's very corrosive. The bore in this rifle is as bright and shiny as the day it was made. So I question again whether it was ever actually fired. Interestingly, they were not very popular as hunting firearms, although we do have one in the collection that has been sporterized because of the unique cartridge. Again, it was a 10.2 millimeter by 38 millimeter rimfire cartridge. So they were just not readily available and were often sold as decorator pieces. And I suspect that this one may have been purchased for that purpose. So how did we get it at the museum? It was donated to the museum, and I need to look at the date here, in 41 by the widow of Paul Milazzo. And when she gave it to the museum, she said, "My husband used this in the Civil War." Well, not the American Civil War, because her husband didn't come to the United States from Italy until either 1891 or 1893, depending on the source. And of course, the American Civil War was long over by the time this rifle was made, actually in 1878. So once again, the story is interesting, but doesn't hold up. Well, who is Paul Milazzo? And when I looked in the accession file, it said he was the Italian consul in Cheyenne. What? Was there an Italian consulate in Cheyenne at the turn of the century? Well, actually, he came to the United States and was employed as a translator for the Italian immigrants who were working on the railroad. And there is, in the records, he received letters of commendation from President Theodore Roosevelt and President Taft for his work with the immigrants in resolving labor disputes and in being an interpreter and working with the Italian community in Cheyenne. So neat guy. I'm kind of sorry that I don't know more about him. But he and his brother had shoe repair shops in Cheyenne. Paul actually had one out at Fort D.A. Russell, and he had one in downtown Cheyenne. And these kind of were traded back and forth. One of the brothers or uncles would take it over, and then the other guy would go open another shop somewhere else. But they had shoe repair shops here, and were very active in the community. And Paul and his wife had 3 children. Their son John was an airmail pilot based out of Cheyenne, and he was the last airmail pilot to be killed in a plane crash on duty in 1929. His plane iced up and he crashed, I think, in Illinois and was killed in that unfortunate incident. So this is kind of a neat rifle. It's kind of funny looking. It looks European if you look at it. It's got this trigger guard with a spur on it. It's got this massive bolt and receiver thing going for it. It's got kind of an interesting flip-up sight. You could shoot this thing at 10 miles with the sight up in the air like that. But again, it grades out as excellent condition under antique firearm condition standards. The blue on the barrel is perfect and unmarked. And I sort of wondered, there are some traces of corrosion here and there. And if it was not used as a hunting rifle and not beat up or not, well, why are there some of these marks on it? Well, again, just my speculation. Paul and his brother and his family had these shoe repair shops, so they were all the time dealing with volatile chemicals, dyes, solvents, glues, and maybe just the exposure in the air would have had some impact on the non-blued parts of this rifle. Or maybe Paul had some of that stuff on his hands and moved it out of the way or moved it to a different display area. Again, that's just rampant speculation on my part. But 1869/71 Vetterli rifle, Swiss manufactured, Swiss military rifle, never used in combat. So that's it for today. If you have questions or comments, get in touch with us through the museum, or you can post comments and questions in the section below this video. So thank you for watching.